And now I'm happy to introduce you to the next panel, which is about from networked city to translocal city. It will be moderated by SUSA Pop, who's the initiator of the Connecting Cities network. And with her on the panel are CÉLINE JOUENNE from Videospread Marseille. And what is also interesting, CÉLINE JOUENNE has been also part of the European Capital of Culture, Marseille Provence 2013, with her organization involved in the program. And next to her we have Diana CIVLE, who was the artistic director of the European Capital of Culture in Riga 2014, and now is the director of Atklāj Rīgu. And next to her we have WRIGHT from FACT Liverpool, and I think Liverpool has also been a European Capital of Culture. When was that? 2007? 2008. So actually we have 3 European Capital of Cultures represented in this panel. And now I'll pass the word on to SUSA Pop, who will give a short introduction to this panel. Thank you.
Okay, hello. Thank you very much. I'm very happy that you joined the panel with me, and I'm happy because 2 or all 3 of my panelists are representatives of European Capital of Culture. So I think Liverpool was in 2008, and as far as I heard from Mark and you played an extraordinary role at those times, and had these, especially these citizens' involvement strategy newly developed, which was often mentioned in these discussions. And then Diana, Riga 2014, you will present us something from this time, and you have been involved in the program of 2013, Marseille Provence. So that was very interesting for us when we started with this Connecting Cities network, and also with the first City Vision network city. We always thought this could be an interesting format actually for the European Capitals of Culture, and maybe also later on to have a format how you can go on being connected with the newly upcoming European Capitals of Culture and have this exchange, because as far as I understand you are also a network in yourself, and also are in contact later. So the network city, we already had some experiments for the Media Facades Festival 2010, when we recognized that these infrastructures have certain internet access, and the bandwidth is getting stronger and stronger. So it was interesting just to think the whole issue about media facades and urban screens a little bit further, and at that time we thought for the first time, how can we connect the cities with these screens and media facades? So in this very short film what I'm going to show you, there is also one iconic project what we produced from those times, but which had a world tour afterwards and was very often presented at festivals later, because it was a kind of political tool. And I think first of all, when we started with this issue, it was interesting, what are network scenarios, how can this function? And you will see some examples. And also for now, when we go further into this panel of the from network to translocal city, so what does it mean for us today when we live in times of migration, what I mentioned before? How can we get more, know more about the cultural background of people, also about their situations, and of course with these tele-distributed presence, what we have seen with Jeremy Bailey, but also a screen as a third space to meet, is, I think, could be a very interesting medium. So let me show you some of these classical examples, what we had from this time. I think I'm only going to show you 3 of them, and so this we had already, and here. So I wanted to, this is a project now which is running, it's soon coming, but I give a short introduction. Berlin was connected with Riga 2014, and we used our own infrastructure in Berlin-Wedding, which is a migrating area, and we just created a kind of light parkour with the windows, around 10 windows from us to a supermarket, and transformed them into an interactive projection window. So here you see from behind the projection, and it was a kind of video conferencing system where the people could intervene with each other. And the next project, this is the other one, is this SMS link shot, which is also an iconic project, what we already produced in 2010, and here we have this exchange between Liverpool and Berlin. So this is, you typed in your messages and immediately the people answered in a direct dialogue. And another project, what is more public gaming, here is the one which we had together with Media Leprado. Gaming, we hadn't so many gaming projects in this last years, but at the beginning, of course, we could see that this has a certain dimension what people really like very much. Here I would say it's a telepresence ritual. The people are meeting in a self-made cloud, and this cloud is a fog, and they are recorded by a Kinect and projected into this cloud and connected with Liverpool. And another one, what everybody in 2013 really loved is this binoculars. So you have been looking through binoculars and your eye was tracked and projected into other cities and observing the people there. And yes, Jeremy Bailey, we had him as a guest here. Here you see him sitting in his office and being presented by his slaves and yes, kind of distributed to other places. And so here I will stop. And what I actually, when we always talk about the different urban contexts, the different countries and the different audiences, of course, we attract with our projects, it is interesting to see Jeremy Bailey's, Paul Sermon's project, who is actually a quite famous artist who started with telematic dreaming already in the 90s, to see his project now between Guangzhou in China and between Perth. So during the Guangzhou Light Festival in November this year, this project was presented in Guangzhou, and here the people stepped in. They were standing in a queue. There were so many, and it was quite unusual for them to have these interactive large installations in the public space, and we're meeting on these virtual landscapes what Charlotte Gold is creating, and yes, which somehow use a lot of objects from these cultural backgrounds and iconic towers, whatever, and attract the people and have a very low understanding because it looks like a computer landscape, and so it's somehow the people recognize these landscapes, and then they are merged from the other side of the world. In this case, we had the same installation in Perth. I think you will also see it, and here we see the screen as a third space where the people interacted with each other. And in Berlin, for us, it was very interesting because at this time, our audience, what is mainly in Berlin, a migrating audience, for example, didn't want to get visible at all and didn't want to participate at all. But as this installation is so simple, they just stepped into this installation, and especially there were the children who were very much participating and came back with their parents. And I'm sure we will hear from Diana later how was it on the other side and how the people behaved in this way. So one project being presented in two different urban contexts, or let's say networked in two different urban contexts, Berlin, Riga, and Guangzhou, Perth, what we can put for discussion later. So we have these different scenarios, what we once tried to find wordings, telepresent encounters, but also telepresent rituals, also storytelling as networkness. If it's not directly connected, then of course we had some projects which were just traveling from city to city and were kind of storytelling and including the people by sharing a certain memory and story. And the screen as a third place, and of course urban activism for shared opinion, what is something what we have seen with this SMS Linkshot, which yes, went on a world tour afterwards and has been presented in completely different context and contributed to provide a tool for the public audience to yes present their opinion. This is so far from my side what I would like to contribute, and I pass over now to CÉLINE. And yes, we just search for your do you find it, or can I help you? CÉLINE, some of our partners, they participated 1 year actively with connecting events, and others did the full program of 3 years, but we have been always in exchange and met on conferences and workshops. So CÉLINE participated in 2013, and this was the time when, yes, Marseille was European Capital of Culture. So
thank you. So in 2013, Marseille was European Capital of Culture. What I might mention is that Videospread is not owner or does not work with a permanent screen. So we work on different events, so it's punctual. So 2013, just in a few figures, it was 900 projects that were presented to the general public over a period of 12 months. It's 11 million visitors that came to Marseille from all over the world, from France, of course, but from other countries as well. It might be interesting to underline the similarity with the Connecting Cities network, because Marseille was not only one city that was hosting the celebration, but it was a territory of a group of maybe 20 to 25 cities that had to work together and in the same direction and with the same vision to connect the cities and to propose all of the different events to the visitors. So that's interesting. It was interesting to see how they were able to mobilize their energy and the know-how to be able to diffuse the information and bring the people to those different cities. Videospread and Connecting Cities within the context of European Capital of Culture. As I said before, there was a lot of competition with all of the events that were being shown. Videospread and Connecting Cities organized one international workshop and conference over a few days, and we presented 2 public events showcasing different interactive installations that were produced in the framework of Connecting Cities Network. So Marseille produced an interactive installation, and we hosted other installations that came from artists that were produced as well in the context of CCN. It was difficult sometimes because the French public was not very receptive to the fact that the installations were interactive. They don't, I think it's cultural, but they don't like being put on the spot, and they don't necessarily like to participate in artworks where you have to take part in it. So sometimes it was a little bit frustrating, but it was interesting to see how the public reacted. In a general way of speaking, It was very interesting to see that the context of the international context of European Capital of Culture and the Connecting Cities Network events put into light that the fact that most of the organizations that were based in Marseille did not have any visibility action at an international level. So they really took conscious of that at that point, and I think that they sort of wondered how Videospread, it's a very small organization, actually was part of the Connecting Cities Network, and it was a good context for us to, it gave us legitimacy towards other organizations, and it gave us the possibility to how do you say, create durable partnerships with larger organizations in Marseille. So now we're able to work in a more professional way. It gave them the opportunity to start looking outside of Marseille and of France as well. And Videospread is acting as a platform between those organizations and the Connecting Cities Network as such. And I think that it really put into light the power of the internationality of the Connecting Cities Network and the fact that there is a real expertise that exists within this network in terms of co-curation, co-production, and the dissemination part with all of the projects that we're circulating in the different cities. So I think that's one of the most important things that we realized at that time, and it's something that we would like to build on in the future with the Connecting Cities Network. We hope that it's actually this first phase was a milestone and that the projects will be able to move on. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I would directly go on to Diana, and yes, you are going to present us your context. Maybe Diana, she's also director of the Staro Light Festival, and as I already mentioned, of Riga 2014, and so you, please.
Yeah, thank you, SUSA. I would like to invite you to travel in the time and go back to 2014, when Riga was the European Capital of Culture. And it was really a great year, and I could say that the European Capital of Culture is not only a valuable brand of Europe and biggest cultural project, but also a really fruitful and sustainable network of cultural institutions and artists. And this year helped us to connect two strong networks, European Capital of Culture people and Connecting City Network. So, and we in European Capital of Culture year, it was more than 150 projects, which could sound not so many, but if we count all sub-activities and sub-projects, it was more than 2,000 activities in 2014. But we implemented 8 projects of Connecting City Network projects, and we used 2 events, our Riga events. It's Light Festival Staro Riga. You can see images from this festival, and White Night event, which also is a informal network of many cities, not only in Europe. Why events? Because this is my curatorial belief that when there is such an event as, for example, Light Festival Staro Riga, which is most beloved event in city events calendar in Riga, then our audience is really open for something new, for some new challenges. And this is way how we can find new audiences and because we made researches and we understand that numbers show that just 15% of possible audience of cultural activities and cultural events is active. They really take part in events, not using internet and looking opera in TV and so on, because participation and active participation in events was one of main goal of our European Capital of Culture program. So, and that's why this event, Light Festival Staro Riga, as really loved by our inhabitants, was a great possibility to not only to show something to them, but involve them in activities, be active. And this is way how we worked with also with Connecting City network events. So one of projects we showed in Staro Riga, and it was special edition, especially for Staro Riga, was a project of Paul Sermon and Charlotte Gould, and it was special edition because this, in this case, it connect not two cities, but two locations in our city. So, and of course, it's a really unique experience for people, not only to understand that they are meeting somewhere or see themselves on the screen, but also meet something from other location. So, and also we made special activities, as this case for Urban Alphabet, to do something, to really make some activities and then understand better what and why they are doing. This is our Esplanade, our special place, open space, open cultural center for Riga 2014 activities, and projects of Connecting City networks was shown there. So there you can see how it looks from Riga side, because there we are connected with Berlin, with Moabit. So this is really probably good to see it from Creative Kitchen side and to understand that always there is somebody who look at and not understand what happened, somebody who are here, by the way, SUSA, you are here, and me. And we understand that this kind of implementation of projects help people overstep psychological barriers of not only contemporary art and understanding of that, but also some challenges of new technologies. And this is also one project we implemented, and it was implemented between different cities. And I choose to show it because I think that this show in really good way that this connection between people, what's happening in our minds, how we can impact each another, so with our thoughts and with how we react to each to other, it helps us with such kind of projects also really to be our surrounding better and make a better understanding between people. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. And we go now over to Mark WRIGHT and then start with our little discussion. Maybe in between, of course, what is interesting to mention is that if you work with this medium of, yes, let's say digital infrastructure, it is not only the screen in itself, but it is, of course, also the place in front of the screen and the whole environment around the screen. And Therefore, it's interesting to include, of course, this space as well, and because very often, we can talk about this also later, we have been asked, how did you do it to network it? But I think it's already so interesting that the people meet in front of these screens and have these shared encounters, this shared experience of being connected to other citizens. Okay, Mark, you are ready?
Yeah, good.
Please.
Hi. SUSA asked me to look at not really what FACT are doing, but to look at methodological issues and to see if there's some kind of method behind all the craziness. So I'm going to call it emerging practices in new media curation, and particularly looking at curation as a form of research and beyond research, a form of social action. Firstly, FACT. So FACT is the Foundation for Art and Creative Technology in Liverpool. We're known for a couple of things. The first is an internationally leading arts program. For example, this year we had the artist collective Assemble, who were working with housing residents in a poor part of Liverpool, non-digitally, but I think it's related to this maker culture. And this was a show put on at FACT before they were nominated for the prize on maker culture, both digital and non-digital. But what we're also I think is very important to FACT is deep and authentic longitudinal community engagement. The seminal Tenant spin, which came out of tactical media in Amsterdam in the 90s, ran for 13 years. And over that time, we built a lot of trust and continuity, and that's really very important to us. And we have extensive young people's and schools engagement based on an active learning and digital literacy rather than just teaching facts or skills. My role is quite interesting. I'm an embedded academic researcher in FACT. I spend 50% of my time in FACT. We don't work through projects. I'm actually part of the team. So they get a researcher and a research culture, and we get this amazing access to artists and access to communities. So this impact is amazing. So that's enough about FACT. So the impact of Connecting Cities with FACT, so there are 3 levels. So operating on a European level, an international level, has been amazing. We've made new contacts and consolidated old contacts. It's already led to human futures, and I'm sure it will lead to many other projects. It's been invaluable to come here and learn and share from people's developing approaches and experiences and learning how they're different, or we could learn from them, or that they're the same that we've had. But I think what's the most exciting thing is realizing that there's new practices and perspectives that are emerging at this international level. The thing one of the key things that emerged from the project was the funding of FACT Lab, which put into place a philosophy that we wanted to enact for some years, which is a response to the changing role of the arts sector from a white cube to a hub for social action and learning. So what we do here is we don't just show art, we actually create art, and we bring communities in through co-design methodologies to interact with us through short, intensive technological innovation and reflection processes. And we're exploring the digital, the cultural significance of the digital through play. And we include artists, HEIs, schools, industry, government, and public places. We think of this in 4 terms. Firstly, arts practice as a disruptive element, disrupting technological-centered thinking. Engagement with communities to ground that thinking in everyday practices of the social, and meaning unfolds in real communities. This is In Hand, which is an award-winning mobile app for mental health for teenagers, which was developed with a group of teenagers, in fact, and a local digital company. And also to act as a hub and a catalyst for the creative ecosystem that surrounds any city and any arts centre. And then to act as a skills base to educate and give practical learning experiments to young people. This is the British Film Institute Film Academy at FACT. So what we do is we move from a white space like this to, this is an example of FACT in the same show as Assemble, where we're bringing in people to and children and building prosthetics for them through 3D printing using online techniques, and to adapt the designs through co-design so that they fit the processes of the people. And we call those the new commoners. They use the common available digital resources and social resources online. So this is, I want to make another point about the digital. I think it's very important that we don't fetishize the digital. And one way to do that is to recognize what is the cultural significance of the digital. And my taking on that is it allows new forms of embodiment and interaction with the world, and that brings into place new ways of doing and thinking, and an evolution of practice and meaning. So here's an example, which is the Dance Theatre of Ireland, where we haven't just mediated dance, we've transformed it into a new form of embodiment, which creates a new form of aesthetic space. This evolution is not possible either through technologically centered development nor focus on requirements capture of existing culture. We have to interact in real time, in vivo, in real communities, and that's inherently interdisciplinary. And it's a form of research that is a form of inquiry through creativity rather than through some kind of analytical analysis. What does this mean in terms of the city? So, for example, the invisible city theme reminded me of de Citeau's famous piece of work, The Practice of Everyday Life, where he talks in Walking the City of inhabitants of the city as being invisible authors, unaware of the text of their activity rights on the fabric of the city. And we can see that media facades are a re-embodiment that make possible to see this text. So, for example, here we have a map which is not created from the survey of geography, but through the survey of behavior, namely the GPS tracks of the taxis of the city of San Francisco. And so I'll just bring this back to the human and end with a question, which is, how does art affect people? And we should look to the process of cultural values and how we explore cultural values, and how art changes our self-perception, our identity, our belonging, our sense of agency. And so my question to you is, what is particularly significant in these terms about new media in public and translocal spaces? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you also for bringing up these interesting questions. What? Everything is fine? Questions. Yes. Already the time. Okay. But maybe I may just bring in one. Yes. How can I say? What I really find interesting, and if each of you could give me a short statement, or some of you would be interested to answer this. What I liked very much about when we have been talking, or yes, working with this topic of networked city, is this follow-up idea of place-making, presence-making, and change-making. This is something what Tanja Toft brought up. When she brought it up, I thought, that's very interesting, you know. Place-making, of course, you start to work with a place, this urban context, and then, of course, presence-making, which is what we can do with urban media, and create this presence. Also, it can be telepresence. And change-making, maybe this is somehow an answer, what we would like to do. Through the presence-making, I think very often you want to get a kind of awareness that there are existing other worlds, other perspectives, which clearly, tell you your presence and give you the possibility to think beyond it, because I think change making, to change something that's so difficult somehow, and so this follow-up I would just give us as a little discussion, and maybe you already would like to give a statement to it, or is there anyone who wants? Otherwise, of course.
What theme? Sorry, I'll just...
Sorry, yes, so the question could be, you think that through telepresence, through these networked scenarios where we created this presence, they implicate a certain change making? Do you think this is something what, for example, artists want to give a kind of impact, or what else could these...
I think that the relationship that you're talking about with the public is very difficult to put in place when it hasn't been prepared. We mentioned this yesterday, and there's a lot of work to do before to mobilize the public and to let them know that there's going to be something happening, and to explain via mediators what they're seeing, what it is about, and what the piece is trying to exchange, to say, etc. And I think French people are not, they have a little bit of trouble, as I said before, interacting in live with those types of installations. Unfortunately, we hadn't prepared for that, so it was sometimes a little bit difficult. But if we had to do it again, we would definitely take that into account, knowing that, and we said this before as well, the same piece of artwork can have a completely different reception, whether it's presented in Berlin or in Marseille or in Liverpool or in Riga, and we experienced that. And when we did the Connecting Cities events, we were connected with Istanbul, and it was very funny because the reaction of the public was similar in Istanbul and Marseille. I don't know if it's cultural; it's the Mediterranean culture that provokes that, but that was interesting to note. And when I could see events that were taking place in other cities, the more northern cities, the interaction was there, it existed, and that, you know, it was nice to see that it could work. It didn't necessarily work the way we wanted it to in our city, but it did. The same piece could work somewhere else. So I think it's difficult to put into place, but if the work is done, if you know the local scene and you know the environment and you have prepared for that, you can bring the artwork in a better way so that it is received and understood in a better way as well.
I could just say that about the role of artists, how artists can, what artists can do, is help to our general audience to have new experiences and really overstep some kind of human fears and human doubts about what is that and what why I need that. And sometimes artistical approach help them to more easy understand very difficult issues in social meaning, in political meaning, in new technologies meaning. So and this is the role of artists, and the role of artists not only in such kind of, let's say, more complicated projects, but also this is also art to convert something really complex to easy way for general public.
Mm-mm.
I think it's such a huge subject, and we've found that it's such a huge subject on the project. So there's a huge range of things that you can do with this technology, and there's a huge range of purposes. We can think of it as something playful. It could be used for something more serious. playfulness certainly has its place in art's history, ludic things, situationists, the tricksters of the tactical media. So it's there, but I think there's a slight danger of it becoming trivialized and a form of entertainment. Whereas I think it does have its role in just giving people an experience that they can hang new ways of understanding off. So this is how I teach. I don't give people facts. I give them an experience, and then, oh yeah, that was something different. So that's how I see this. And then we bring in maybe more deeper projects, more focused projects, more long-term projects that might have some more depth to them. So I think it's and we're just starting. It's such an amazingly rich area that could profoundly change what culture is, and we're just trying to understand even the aesthetics of it to begin with. So.
Yes, and also one last remark, and then I think you are completely right, because on one hand, these projects presented in the public space, they somehow have to be understandable. And but on the other hand, of course, they also have to be critical and not too superficial. So there is a huge balance how to do it, especially when you then have a mass audience, which is, yes, maybe not so educated about in this field. Then if you work with a media facade that is embedded in a museum where the audience is more educated and maybe know more about it, or expect more to discover. And this, I think, is also the big challenge on one hand of curating these places and cities and urban environments, but also for the artists to create these kind of art pieces. And so this now, please, if someone would like to add something and has a question, I would open this panel. We don't have so much time. Maybe 3 questions? Are there 3 questions? 1 question. Okay, so is there 1 question?
I want to ask a question about the playfulness. In 2014, during Future Everything conference, there was a whole topic about urban games, and there was an interesting notion by a woman whose name I forgot, but she researched that when people are playing games in cities, their feeling of ownership of this city changes. So by playing in the city, their relation with the space really changes. So if this can be done by means of playing, the result is not just entertainment. So can you somehow say something about that? I think. Yeah.
No, you're right. So that's why I was saying that the playfulness and the ludic has its place in culture and art theory. So that's true. There's this pernicious political perspective of neoliberal capitalism that sees art as nothing more than a form of entertainment and tries to push it in, stop it being too dangerous and too disruptive. So that's what I'm worried about. But the concept of play is extremely important to creativity. And the other thing I'd like to do is just go back to the tie-in with the keynote, which is for interdisciplinarity, is this thing in culture. It isn't ours. It sits between art, it sits between activists, it sits between technology, and it sits with designers. So design, some of these issues that artists struggle with is they're experience design issues, and we can learn from each other to do that. And certainly play and games are an essential part of it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.